basically, I was kind of a late starter with music and really got going, about 15 years old. I took some piano lessons before that, but I never really clicked with piano. That was a good basis for everything, and I definitely learned some of the basics. But I really got into playing guitar, sort of in my teens, and basically because of the music I was listening to, and I really wanted to play those songs. And um, that took me, I was just a rock kid, but then right near the end of high school, I heard some Oscar Peterson on the radio. And if you guys don't know Oscar Peterson, great jazz piano player from Canada, just the most amazing technique. And I heard this boogie woogie like blues with this rollicking left hand and amazing technique on the right hand. And since I was a metal kid, I thought, well, this guy has chops. And that was the thing that kind of hooked me in. And when I talked to my music teacher at school, I was like, have you heard of Oscar Peterson? And it just happened that she was awesome. And she started giving me records of music to listen to and got me in the jazz band at school. And so that was my first exposure to jazz music. I didn't grow up hearing any of that music. So that took me to college in New Zealand, and I started to learn a little bit more about jazz and study jazz, and did a few years of school there, and then played professionally in New Zealand for a few years. Ended up playing a lot of guitar, and that was great. I got a lot of experience performing, but it's a small country and a small town, so I needed to get out of there and learn a lot more. So I came to New York and went to school, the new school, and did a jazz program there. And that's when I really learned a lot and met a lot of people. And that's finally kind of near the end of that time is when I kind of reconnected with rock music and started playing in a lot of people's bands. Started playing a lot of bass as well, because guitar players know that there's always a shortage of bass players. So if you can play bass, you're going to have more gigs. So I spent a lot of time studying bass as well, and played in some different rock bands and toured with bands and played over the US with different groups. And, that was kind of around the time I met Jason as well. So we had some different groups that we played together. I played in Jason's piano trio. That was a really fun project where we were melding like the rock music we loved with the improvisation of jazz and the acoustic sounds of jazz, but then also manipulating them in more rock context. So if you guys haven't checked out Jason's piano stuff, then I'd recommend that, because there's some really cool records. And I still think, even though we recorded them a long time ago, it's some really fun stuff. And Jason's a great writer in that context as well. So
I'm not as old as Aaron, so
nobody is.
No one's as old as Aaron.
Totally kidding. So I'm not from New Zealand, but I'm from San Diego, California. And I moved to New York to go to theater school. So my background is not in jazz, but in tap dancing and, all the good Broadway fun stuff. Yeah, I came to school for acting, singing, and dancing, and I just always wrote music. My mom was a songwriter, so I just always found that was like a place for me to put my teenage angst. Basically decided that musical theater wasn't for me, and I just started really, just delving into music, and I formed a band called Strip Darling. And then, of course, as all bands do at some point, unless you're Aerosmith, basically the band collapsed. I called Aaron and I was like, will you please work with me on this?
It's so fun to hear you guys talk about your history, and to think that, so many of our students are at the beginning of that journey now, and all of that stuff that they have no idea is coming at them, that they can't predict at all. And it really just requires a little bit of trust in yourself and trust in the process of collaboration, that it's all going to turn out okay, and just give it a shot with as many people as possible, really. What was that first germ of an idea where you kind of said, oh, that's kind of cool, like, let's go with that, let's run with that, and then just kind of see the progression of the track?
I came to this realization at the beginning of the whole sort of lockdown period, that I was writing songs that were too fast. Tempo is a really, really important part of the mood of a track. Modern songwriting is just as much about production as it is about sitting down with the guitar. A lot of the time if you sit down with a guitar and you play a song, it could be fast, it could be slow. It seems like maybe a little bit more elastic, but with, sort of modern production, you're kind of writing from the sounds as much as you are the chord progression or the melody or the lyrics. So what we do a lot of the time is, you know, a lot of the time I'll be making tracks at home and maybe think, oh wow, this is cool. Let me see if Jackie likes this. And so I'll just, you know, text her an MP3 and be like, you know, what do you think? And sometimes she's like, oh, I love that. And Jackie sounded great singing slower tempos. It sort of seemed to fit the lyrics better. It was moodier, and kind of a little bit more hip hop rather than rock. This whole series of songs that we did recently were based around thinking about writing at a slower tempo.
The chorus came first, and my purpose with the chorus was I wanted to do, like, I'm such a lyricist, and I normally am like creating these, like, you know, stories within a chorus. And this one I was like, no, I need to simplify. I just want to sing the same thing over and over again, like a, you know, a really like hooky chorus. And so that was my goal and my mission for this. And so that came to be, and luckily Aaron liked it and we kept it. But the verse, interestingly enough, I had it in a different place rhythmically, and Aaron was like, it doesn't sound right. So we like came up with like, I think 3 or 4 other verses until we came back to this first one, and we just moved it into a different place. So sometimes your first
moved it a couple of beats,
right?
right? It's a couple of beats earlier or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had an initial idea, we explored 3 other options, and then it ended up coming back to the first thing, but just maneuvered it a little bit. So definitely save all your versions, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Save the first ones, because, like, I mean, 95% of the time it's like the first 2 takes, you know, or whatever, you know. So there's a lot of richness in those first 2 takes. Yeah. So for you, the relationship between lyrics and music, are you waiting to kind of get the vibe of the music before you start writing lyrics, or do you have journals where you're like, oh, that thing, this one finally works, I've been looking for that, and then there it is?
No, I'm like really, like, I sing in gibberish for the first, like, you know, 3 rounds, and I save different vocal tracks. And I listen back to the melody, and I let the melody help me formulate lyrics. And a lot of times, you know, songs, I end up figuring out what the song is about once it's written. Like, I'm like, my subconscious is working, and I let that process happen. It's rare that I go into a song knowing exactly what it's going to be about. Normally, you know, I'll be singing in gibberish, and a melody line will come, and then lyrics that support that melody come next. And then it's usually those beginning words help me outline what the story is going to be about. So it was definitely interesting making closure, because I was recovering from COVID in the process of making it, and like, I was super hoarse, and I was scared that I was going to like end up on the floor at the Javits Center, and like super high anxiety, not feeling great. And so lyrically, this song ended up being about 2 of my best friends who are having horrific dating experiences, because I needed, like, mentally to give myself a break and to think about something light and fluffy, but which is my friends' dating experiences. And so that's what the song is about. But it was written during a not so pleasant time, personally.
Well, let's any other stuff you want to show on the session, Aaron, that could be interesting for us?
I think it's one of the things that Jackie said made me think about just ways of songwriting, because, you know, obviously the traditional way of songwriting is somebody sits down and plays a few chords and maybe has a thought about a feeling they're having or a lyric they want to get out. Like you were saying, maybe they write lyrics in a journal. And a lot of sort of contemporary songwriting is not that anymore. You know, a lot of it is, you know, at Ableton or Logic or Pro Tools, and there, you know, people are playing, you know, making beats and then layering harmonies over beats. And but I think one of the things is, you know, everything sort of, what the things that sort of seem to have the strongest outcomes are things that have a premise to begin with. And by that I mean, if you have a germ of an idea and like something that you want to start with, that gets you a beginning place. You know, I'm sure everybody's had the same experience of like sitting down at the piano or sitting down at the guitar, and you're like, well, I should write a song today. You're like, what am I going to write? And it's really hard to have a starting point. But if you're like, you know, I came to the realization that I needed to write some songs at a certain tempo, and that was really my premise for this whole series of songs. And then that, you know, all those things grew out of that very, very, very simple idea of tempo. And then obviously Jackie's talking about like, oh, I wanted to make a chorus that had a concept behind it before, you know, thinking about lyrics or melody or anything, if I'm right. Yeah. So I think it's great to have like, you know, they don't have to be high flowing concepts. You know, you don't have to be like, well, I have to explain this feeling, blah 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 blah. It's more just like here's an idea to hang the whole thing off, and then you let the voyage of discovery take you on the path of like, oh, here's some words that work with that idea, and here's some melody works, or like, you know, for me, it's like here's the sounds that work or the beats that work at that idea. So, you know, it's always very powerful to have an idea to start with. You know, I've done records where I'm like, my concept is I'm going to sample the previous record.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take all those sounds and I'm going to manipulate them, and then that's going to become the starting place for the next record. So, you know, any weird idea you have can be a place of inspiration. So that's all I wanted to add, because that Jackie made me think of that.
If it's not just flowing out of you, find something to get the ball rolling, which I think your idea of like, I'm going to write 5 songs within this 20 BPM thing. Or, you know, I tend to get overwhelmed as well. And my thing is like, all right, I have maybe 8 instruments in this room. I'm going to pick 3 and I'm going to write a track with just these 3 instruments. And you just immediately delve so deep into those 3 that you give it time and you hear things that you never would have heard. So I think this idea of consolidation, whether it's like making a template in Logic or whatever, of like, I'm going to just make a song with 7 tracks. And I'm going to make 4 songs with 7 tracks, and I'm not going to go beyond that. Like, I love those projects, and they're always so much more creative than just like, let's just throw everything on the wall and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's part of the key to it too, is not expecting the first thing to be any good. One of my other favorite techniques for songwriting is taking a song I love and analyzing the harmony. So, or the rhythm as well. You know, we've definitely done some tracks where I've like listened to a record and I'm like, I want to do my version of that rhythmic thing. You know, and definitely on this track I've been listening to a lot, like a couple of tracks, you know, listening to a certain record and being like, why do I like this record? What are the chord progressions that draw me into this record, or the sounds, or whatever it is? But particularly like taking like, oh, this chord movement, because nobody owns a chord movement, right?
Exactly.
Every chord progression has been used ad nauseum. So if you're like, okay, I love it when it goes from a D minor to an F major, but then it goes to a C sharp. Because that's the key to that. And you know, there's certain songwriters who you'll hear that will do certain things that is the thing that catches your ear, because everybody goes C to F to G to A minor. Cool. Everybody's done that, right? But then who puts a B flat in there? And there's some songwriters who always put the B flat in there. You know, when the Beatles discovered that if they were playing a song in the key of G and they put an F chord in there or a C minor, that was like their world was blown. And all the songs of those periods have those chords.
Same thing for lyrics, you know, like I put a Bjork track, Hyper Ballad on the playlist, and I don't know if anybody's listened to those lyrics ever, but they are really dark, but so brave. So I always think about that song, about like, she really just goes there, and like I always ask myself from a lyric perspective, am I going there? Like, am I taking a chance, or am I being, you know, am I holding something back, you know? And trying to find, you know, words that have never ever been used in a song. I like to find those words and put them in songs just for the sake of it. So
Hey guys, I was wondering, how do you know what kind of music you want to do? Like what style, what sound you want to use? I mean, you got to have a general idea of a concept or something, and how do you get to that point? Thanks.
I feel like that's just something that's always in flux. A lot of the time it's the latest record I'm obsessed with. And I find that it's kind of a blessing and a curse because, you know, it's easy to get to be moved by hearing other records, and maybe you go in a certain direction and you're like, oh no, we have to pull it back. But, you know, as you saw that, you know, we started off with sort of this pretty synth rock sound, and we've gone into more of like a slow, you know, more electronic, you know, production style. So I certain people I think are lucky in their limitations, like you were saying, Jason, about like Neil Young or Nirvana, is like they played the music that in some ways they could play, right? And so they kind of had the decision made for them as they played the music, their version of the bands they loved, right? That's, I think, what we all try to do in a lot of ways, is we all try to make the combination of all the music we love into something that we do, right? So I think that's kind of, maybe that's my answer really, is like, just try to synthesize all the things you love about all the things you love, find all the pieces, the elements, as we're saying, right? So I love the way that the Beatles play the 4 minor chord, right? So I'm going to write some songs with 4 minor, and then I love the rhythms of Tom York's electronic music, and I love Johnny Greenwood and Radiohead, and I also love Aphex Twin, right? And so I'm trying to like synthesize all these different elements into a musical style that that works for me. And that being said, you don't always have to do one thing, right? So I have a lot of different collaborations and a lot of different projects. So, you know, with Jackie, I write a certain way. I just finished producing a record for another artist, and I kind of gave myself another set of like design prerogatives and that to make that a unified project. So I think, you know, depending on what you do, whether you're a solo songwriter and you're trying to find your voice, there's a different answer to that, as opposed to being somebody who maybe produces other people or collaborates with different projects. So
we're always evolving, right? So the you today, you know, is not the you in a year from now. So like whatever you love right now, get into that, you know, and try that out. And then in another year, try something else out. Or like Aaron, you know, he has all these different projects, so he gets to try different things, which is another like amazing option.
But how do you go from, I really like that, and inspires me? How do you go from that to, I make it my own?
It's actually really easy, because there's 2 things about that. Is number one, you can't ever do it the same way as somebody else. Like, you're never going to play bass the same as James Jamerson, right? So if you learn a James Jamerson lick on the bass,
especially not me.
Yeah, but that's great. But that's especially not anyone. See, that's the thought process, right? So if I'm going to cop something from a record, don't worry about it. Cop it as well as you can, because it's always going to be different. So number one, your premise is wrong, because you're going from the like, I can't do this because somebody else did it, and I'm going to sound just like them. Think, I'm going to take as much as I can from them, and it's always going to turn out like me. And it's fine if at the beginning of your process, if it sounds just like something you've heard, because you'll find your subtleties within that, right? So also, the other thing to remember is everything that's been done was done before that, and it was done after that. So there's nothing precious about any ideas in music. You know, like every chord progression has been played by Bach and Mozart and Beethoven, and, you know, all that stuff, Stockhausen, you know, like it's all been done. So don't get precious with it, because it's all function, right? So the important thing is, like, especially talking about a bass line, right? The most important thing with a bass line is it's functional. It's not art, right? So when Jason says play a bass line, just play something that works. Number one, play something that works. Once you've got something that works, then you have the time to find the flair that makes it yours, right? So whether it's a fill or it's like a pedal that gives it a specific sound, but, you know, how many bass lines go do 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 do, right? You know, millions of songs go that. But if it goes all of a sudden, maybe that's yours. You added one extra note, or you're like you know, whatever it is, you just start with the thing that works, and you're like, okay, this is boring. What can I do to change it or make it my own? But if you go, I can't do that because it's already done, then you can't play any music. You know, and I have to, and also the best stuff that comes out for me is the stuff that I've taken that point of inspiration from someone else and run with it, and it never ever turns out the same. Nobody's ever like, oh, you've made the song based on that, you know. It's very hard to do that, you know. As you're learning, you know, you start making really derivative stuff as you're trying to like figure it out, and you're trying to find your voice, and that's okay as well to be derivative as you're learning, because that's part of the process. You know, all the great jazz musicians started playing and sounding just like the guys they loved, but as they learn more and synthesize more ideas, all of a sudden they become more of a meld. So again, like, you know, you might hear this bass line and think, oh, this is real James Jamerson, right? So, okay, what if I take James Jamerson, then I add that to, you know, another bass player that I would like. Okay, what happens when James Jamerson and Flea meet? You know, whoever. It doesn't matter, but like that's what makes it you. It's because you're taking the things that you love and you're sticking them together in a really unique way. Damon Albarn from Blur. I remember seeing him saying something about, you know, it's the best songwriters are the best people are the people who steal the best ideas.
Do you have a certain way that you work to create a song from A to Z? Meaning, I'll give you my problem sometimes is that I can sit home and record like a great chorus, and I sit and I write all the details and I make it sound like $1 million. And then maybe I have in the same time a great verse, but when I go to connect them, it's like, it's just, I have a great verse and a great chorus, and there's like, how do you bridge between them? And sometimes it works, but a lot of time I just get stuck and I'm like, okay, I just don't have any idea how to connect the verse with the chorus or the other way around. So that's question A. And question B, which might be connected, is if you have certain specific elements that you use to create different dynamics in the songs, meaning intensifying and getting more quiet and whatever.
Totally. Yeah. Jackie, do you want to say anything before I wrap it on again?
Oh no, go. I was distracted by the cute cat. Go ahead.
Okay, so question A is, so how are you writing these sections of the song that are so different they don't work?
But I'm starting with a nice groove, which is most of the time like a chorus or something. And then because of my character, the way I do things is that I get so obsessed by it and I want to make it sound perfect. So I record like 10,000 tracks and I make it sound super good and super well produced as a unit by itself. And then maybe I'll find a verse that, I mean, harmonically wise it works along. If I strummed it on an acoustic guitar, it would be great. And it has a kind of a different vibe because whatever, when I jam to it, that's what I got. And then sometimes it just doesn't, it's not very coherent between the two of them. And then I find it hard to connect them or to build a full structure of a song using those two units that I have.
I found a key to writing that is counterintuitive is don't change very much between chorus and verse. Okay. Is one of my new aims in life. And you know, a lot of time, because we're all come from that sitting there playing guitar and like being like, well, if I want to go to a chorus, it has to like modulate to like to 6 minor, or it has to go to the 4 chord on the chorus, and then it like has a flat 7, and then that'll really make it the chorus. But try as an experiment writing with the same elements on the verse and the chorus and using something else to make it the other section.
When you say same elements, you mean
it can be anything. It can be the same harmony, it can be the same sounds, it can be the same groove. Try to write a song that's really samey the whole way through and find the really cool things that can change. And then you'll be like, oh, you know, it's really cool, but it's a bit too samey. What if I just change this one chord here? And all of a sudden that you know, like things don't, again, it's more of like a modern production style where like a hip hop track, you know, doesn't have huge modulations, or electronic music may go through different things, but it's maybe through composed. So I think, you know, that's one way that may break you out of your habits of, you know, thinking about it as separate things. So say, you know, like, man, I just really want to make a song that is like D minor, F, C, and I'm going to use a G on the chorus, but I'm still going to use those other chords, you know? And that'll really, you know, again, starting from a premise that is unified across the whole song, because you're thinking about it like the chorus and a verse are separate. Like what makes the chorus and the verse the same? So whether it's like the chorus and the verse are the same, or because I have a synth pad that goes through the whole song, and it becomes a chorus because I bring in the guitar. You know, there's lots of different ways to think about that, but I think that's been a really useful way for me to break out of the habits of writing harmonically. And, you know, some of our best tracks are the ones that have a 4-bar bass line that doesn't change over the entire track. And people, you know, when we play it live, people freak out about like this song called Silver and Gold. And it's just like a sequence bass line that I just color differently. And Jackie builds choruses and verses just because the vocals changes.
I was gonna say, I think the melody. I mean, don't forget the melody. Like we we talk so much about these songs. Where I'm always referencing these songs. Whether everyone knows I like to talk about Taylor Swift, but that pops in my brain of her "Shake It Off" and like the Lord track. Like there's so many like great pop songs that when you teach them, like, okay, here's the 3 chords for the verse, and it's the same for the pre-chorus, and it's the same for the chorus. They don't change the chords. What changes? The melody changes from the verse to the pre-chorus, then it changes from the chorus. Just the production element, something comes in to make your ear go, oh, that's different. But like harmonically, the meat of the song, it's the same, know. And again, this idea of limitations.
I was going to suggest too, Tom. Are you a singer too, Tom? Do you sing?
I do background vocals mostly, but I do enjoy when I record to sing my own stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Another thought process to like help bridge the verse and the chorus ideas. If you love your chorus and you have a melody idea for the chorus, track that, and then with the same chorus that you have, find another melody line that goes with that chorus, and then try to turn that into your verse. So that's worked.
Yep.
So you use the same chorus, you write a second line, and then you isolate the line and try to write a verse using that line.
Exactly.
Nice trick.
Like,
cool.
Yeah, because, and then again, like your harmony can be the same way. You can reharmonize it as well, as you can be like, oh, well, this melody is great and it comes from the chorus chords, but if I just change one chord, it has a slightly different flavor, or maybe another trick I use is I'll use the same chords, but they move in different times. Yeah. So say it'll be like 4 bars of D minor and then 4 bars of F. Maybe I go 4 bars plus 2 beats of D minor and 2 beats of F. And that's a great way to take the same sort of sound, but just change it up enough. So it's all about breaking those habits. And then to your second question, I think Jason just addressed that beautifully, but melody is 90% of what makes a chorus pop. But, obviously with production elements, it's usually going from, less dense to more dense for a chorus, right? And you're going from less energy to more energy from a chorus. So it's all those elements, and it depends on what you do stylistically, but a lot of the time that translates sonically to more high end and more low end. So whether the verse has a smaller bass sound and then the chorus explodes with like a ton of bass, or it gets more rhythmic, or like a high guitar comes in on the chorus to signify that that's a chorus. Those are like standard production techniques for making a chorus pop or a section pop. And then
do you have one that you find that works great for you, that you like the most?
All those things. I use anything that works.
Okay.
And it's always song dependent. Like, the song that we played, I originally thought I was going to put some big pads, big pads, and that would fill out the chorus and make it sound great. But it totally didn't work for whatever reason. So then I was like, well, what's going to have that energy? I have to have something that's sort of up on the vocal register, fighting with the vocal a little bit to raise the energy of the track. And then I have like, a 16th note bass line or 8th note bass line, underneath it. But it's all problem solving, right? So it's try an idea. If it doesn't work, just try something else. Or like If it's not working, listen to a song that sounds like your song and see what they did right.
Yeah.
You know, I sometimes when I'm stuck, I'm like, oh, I really want to make this poppier. So maybe I'll listen to Taylor Swift, or I'll, you know, listen to somebody else and look for inspiration in somebody else's great ideas, because I'm not copying their ideas, I'm copying the concept of their idea. So whether it's, I'm not going to take somebody's melody, I'm going to be like, oh, they're playing a melody in the chorus. Of course, why don't I ever think of that, right? A hook is just as good as a pad. So if a pad's not working, try a hook. You know, if the hook's not working, what about some rock guitar? You know, if rock guitar is not working, what about an arpeggiator? The more you learn and the more techniques you have, the more answers you'll have to those questions every time you get to them in songwriting. And then the other really important thing is obviously register with vocals, right? Because obviously higher signifies more energy. So a lot of time, if the verse is low, the chorus will go high. That's just like a standard thing, because that's the way we hear music.
Yeah.
A classic example of that is Bowie's Ashes to Ashes. He sings the entire first half of the song like real low, right?
Yeah.
Then when he pops up, all of a sudden the song explodes. So, and that's, you know, every pop song as well, but like that one I always think about, because it's like, oh, this is brilliant. He sings the whole song an octave lower.
Yeah.
And then he gets to the second half of the song, and it's like, what just happened? You don't even know what just happened, but it sounds amazing. And it's a simple technique that just is great. So
I have that same thing with Heroes, man. With Heroes, he does the same thing. Halfway through,
boom. Writing with Aaron, when he'll send tracks, like we had mentioned, like for Closure, the chorus came first. You know, I did write a verse before I wrote the chorus, but it was a journey to land on the verse that we selected. So I think just be open, and you know, maybe you do start like from verse to chorus to bridge, but maybe in the end of it you end up changing the verse, you know, even though you started with it first. So don't be afraid to throw things out as well.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And also, I mean, for my process, since I'm not a songwriter, I'm not thinking about the lyrics or the story, I'm thinking about a track and the sonics. A lot of time for me, the inspiration is finding a sound. So, you know, maybe I'll find something on the modular synth that's like a little rhythmic thing, or like a cool pad, or a weird thing. And I'm just looking for something that I haven't heard before, that I haven't made before, you know, and that's my point of inspiration. So usually I'll just like either record a bit of that and then start building layers on top of that. So a lot of the time I don't know what I'm making. I'm just making stuff I like. And then it becomes, you know, like a lot of the time I'm making tracks, I'm not thinking about Jackie, and I'm like, you know, I'm just making stuff. I'm just experimenting. So give yourself the time to just play, you know, like, you know, you're obviously a guitar player, but you have keys, like get a combination of guitar pedals you haven't done before, and like, just try to come from a different place that you looks like you've done everything before, like judging by Jason smells.
Right, the guitar pedals.
Yeah, or you know, or not, you know, like start with something that's like, you know, just try to find something that you haven't done before, and just try to, like, you know, find something that flows and can be just like a through line for your track. And then after that, you can worry about, I don't worry about structure too much, because that can always be changed. Like, you know, often we're cutting in an extra verse, or, you know, cutting the verse short of the second one, or I mean, I work in Pro Tools, and I'm just using the shuffle command all the time to like take sections out, or like, this is too long, it's boring, bang, gone, you know, save as, so you can always come back to it. Yeah. But, you know, working in this world is like, I'm always just cutting, or I'm like, I need 4 more bars, copy and paste, done. We have 4 more bars. What makes those 4 more bars different? I don't know, add a new sound there. That's great. You know, so again, just thinking very functionally about it. It's not like being precious about like, this is my chorus, this is my verse. It's like, this section sounds cool. Do I want to hear more of it? Is it boring now? Where do we go next?
You go, like, you evolve the things like by bars, kind of like. And then you add more bars and more bars. Yeah,
I'm very cut and paste when I'm working on stuff. It's you know, I'll loop things if I don't have enough of them. I'll just copy and paste it out if I need more of it, or I'll think about that as an opportunity for a new sound to come in. If I need more of a section, but it's boring the way it was, then something else should happen that's different. So that's what works for me, you know. But I think, again, just like I think just thinking, like, try to through compose a little bit. you know.
I just thought of something, A, when you were saying that, like, if, you know, I'm sure we can all relate to those like sections of songs, or even a song where you just feel really like you played it over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden it feels totally like blah, and like you're sick of it and you're uninspired. And A, when you were talking about like adding a new pedal in or something like that, like finding something to help you get re-inspired into that track or into that section. Like for live performances, I got a TC Helicon of voice touch, so like I could start looping, and it has all these effects in it. And like when we added that into our live set, it just made me feel like a brand new person and a brand new musician, and I felt like excited again, you know. So you know, I love the Memory Man. That's like my favorite pedal of all time. Like, get a Memory Man. Like, that shit will, like, excuse my language. It will help re-inspire or help you find a new line for a track.
Believe me, I already have two.
Oh, nice.
Excellent.
Man, that was a lot of fun. Aaron and Jackie, thank you so much for taking this time and to get so deep in the creative process with us. Ciao, ciao, everybody.
Bye, bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you
Yeah.
very
Bye.
much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
You know, I thought it was over. Did you say we had closure? You know, I thought we got out that way. I'm talking myself